Every creak of the house, every shadow in the hallway suddenly feels like it's hiding something. I grew up in a quiet suburb outside of Portland, Oregon, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and kids rode their bikes until dark. My parents both worked late, so by the time I was 10, I was used to being home alone for a few hours after school. I never thought twice about it until the night I realized how quickly normal can turn into a nightmare. It was a Thursday in early spring. I got home around 3:30, dropped my backpack in the hallway, and grabbed a snack. My parents wouldn't be home until after 6, so I settled in to watch cartoons and do my homework. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing outside. Around 5 o'clock, I heard a noise from the backyard, a soft thump, like someone jumping off the fence. At first, I thought it was just a raccoon or maybe the neighbor's dog, but then I heard footsteps crunching on the gravel path. I muted the TV and listened, heart pounding. The footsteps stopped right outside the back door. I crept into the kitchen and peeked through the blinds. A man was standing on the patio, facing the door. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, his hands stuffed in his pockets. He didn't look like anyone I recognized from the neighborhood. He knocked, softly at first, then harder. I froze, not sure what to do. He tried the doorknob, rattling it, then pressed his face against the glass, peering inside. I ducked down, praying he hadn't seen me. After a minute, he walked around the side of the house. I heard the gate creak open, then footsteps on the front porch. He rang the doorbell, over and over, then started pounding on the door. I grabbed the cordless phone and dialed 911, whispering to the dispatcher what was happening. The man kept circling the house, trying every window and door. At one point, I heard him in the garage rummaging through the recycling bins. I locked myself in the bathroom, clutching the phone, listening as he moved from room to room, tapping on the glass, whispering things I couldn't make out. The police arrived 10 minutes later, sirens blaring. I heard them shouting, then the sound of running footsteps. When they finally let me out, I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. They never caught the man. The only thing he left behind was a muddy footprint on the back step and a feeling. I've never been able to shake the knowledge that sometimes the only thing standing between you and danger is a locked door and a little bit of luck. After that night, I never felt safe being home alone again. I double-checked every lock, kept the curtains closed, and jumped at every sound. My parents tried to reassure me, but I could see the fear in their eyes too. It's been years, but I still remember the way that man looked through the glass, searching for a way in. For weeks after, I had nightmares about the man coming back. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, convinced I heard footsteps outside my window. Sometimes, I'd find the gate open in the morning, or muddy prints on the porch, and I'd wonder if he'd come back while we were sleeping. One afternoon, a few months later, I was home alone again when I heard a knock at the door. My heart started racing, but when I peeked through the peephole, it was just the mailman. Still, I waited until he was gone before opening the door. That fear never really left me. As I got older, I learned that there had been a string of break-ins in our neighborhood that spring. The police thought it was the same man, looking for houses where kids were home alone. They never caught him. Now, as an adult, I always check the locks before I go to bed. I keep a baseball bat by the door, and I never ignore a strange noise. Because I know how quickly a normal day can turn into something you never forget. If you ever lived in an old house, you know how basements can feel like a world apart. Ours was unfinished, with concrete floors, exposed pipes, and a single bare bulb that barely lit the stairs. My parents used it for storage, and I hated going down there, even in the daytime. But one winter afternoon when I was 11, I learned that sometimes the scariest things aren't in your imagination. It was a Saturday in January. My parents had gone to a wedding out of town, and my older brother was supposed to be watching me, but he'd left to hang out with friends. I didn't mind. I liked having the house to myself. I spent the morning playing video games and eating junk food, not a care in the world. Around 3 p.m., I heard a loud bang from the basement. At first, I thought it was just the furnace kicking on. But then I heard it again, 3 sharp knocks echoing up the stairs. I muted the TV and listened. The house was silent, except for the wind rattling the windows. I tried to ignore it, but the knocking came again, louder this time. I grabbed the flashlight and crept to the basement door. It was closed, but I could see a faint light coming from underneath, flickering like a candle. I called out, "Hello?" But there was no answer. My heart was pounding, but I told myself it was just a blown fuse or maybe a mouse knocking something over. I opened the door and started down the stairs, the flashlight beam shaking in my hand. Halfway down, I heard a whisper so soft I almost missed it. "Let me in." I froze, every instinct telling me to run, but I forced myself to keep going. The light was coming from the far corner, where my dad kept his old workbench. As I got closer, I saw that the window above the bench was open, snow blowing in. The wind must have knocked something over, I thought. I closed the window and turned to leave, but then I saw a set of muddy footprints leading from the window to the stairs. I ran back up, slammed the door, and locked it. I called my brother, but he didn't answer. I tried my parents, but their phones went straight to voicemail. I sat in the living room, clutching the flashlight, jumping at every sound. As the sun went down, the house grew colder. I heard the knocking again, this time from the back door. I peeked through the blinds and saw a man standing on the porch, his face hidden by a hood. He tried the doorknob, then started tapping on the glass, just like he had in the basement. I called 911, whispering to the dispatcher what was happening. The police arrived 10 minutes later, but the man was gone. They found footprints in the snow, leading from the porch to the alley, but nothing else. When my parents got home, they changed all the locks and put bars on the basement windows. For weeks after, I refused to go downstairs alone. I kept having nightmares about the man in the basement, about the whisper at the bottom of the stairs. A few months later, my dad found a crowbar hidden behind the furnace. The police thought the man had been trying to break in for days, waiting for the right moment. They never caught him. Now, whenever I hear a strange noise in the house, I remember that day, the knocking, the footprints, the whisper in the dark. And I know that sometimes the scariest things are the ones you almost let in. When I was 9, my family moved to a small town in Pennsylvania. Our house was a 2-story colonial with big windows that looked out over the street. My parents both worked long hours, so I spent a lot of afternoons home alone, doing homework at the kitchen table or watching cartoons in the living room. It was late October, and the days were getting shorter. My parents had left for a work event, promising to be home by dinner. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet, the way the house felt like it belonged to me for a few hours. I made myself a snack and settled in with my math homework. Around 4:30, I heard a knock at the front door. I peeked through the peephole, but no one was there. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a package delivery or a neighbor kid playing a prank. A few minutes later, I heard tapping at the living room window. I looked up and saw a girl standing outside, maybe a year or two older than me, with long dark hair and a red jacket. She smiled and waved, but something about her made me uneasy. I didn't recognize her from school or the neighborhood. She motioned for me to open the window. I shook my head, but she kept waving, her smile never fading. I went to the front door and called out, "Can I help you?" But she didn't answer. She just stood there, staring at me through the glass. I locked all the doors and went upstairs, hoping she'd go away. But when I looked out my bedroom window, she was still there, standing in the yard, watching the house. As the sun set, the girl moved from window to window, tapping on the glass, always smiling. I tried calling my parents, but their phones went straight to voicemail. I called a neighbor, but no one answered. I hid in the bathroom, heart pounding, listening to the tapping move around the house. At one point, I heard her voice soft, almost a whisper. "Let me in. I just want to play." I stayed in the bathroom until I heard my parents' car pull into the driveway. When I finally came out, the girl was gone. My parents didn't believe me at first, but when they checked the yard, they found footprints in the mud, circling the house. The next day at school, I asked around, but no one knew a girl with long dark hair and a red jacket. The police said it was probably just a runaway or a prank, but I never saw her again. For weeks after, I had nightmares about the girl at the window, her smile, her voice, the way she seemed to know exactly where I was in the house. Even now, years later, I still get nervous when I hear tapping at the window, and I always make sure the doors are locked before I'm home alone. Because sometimes the scariest visitors are the ones who never really leave. If you ever spent a night home alone during a storm, you know how quickly the dark can turn your house into a place you barely recognize. I was 13 the night the power went out, and I learned that sometimes the scariest things aren't what you imagine, they're what you almost see. It was early March, and my parents had gone to a dinner party across town. They left me with pizza, a stack of movies, and strict instructions to call if I needed anything. The sky was already gray when they left, and by the time I finished eating, rain was lashing the windows and thunder was rumbling in the distance. I was halfway through a movie when the lights flickered and went out. The house was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the occasional flash of lightning. I found the flashlight in the kitchen drawer and tried to call my parents, but the phone was dead. No signal, no dial tone, nothing. I told myself it was just a storm, that the power would come back soon. I curled up on the couch with a blanket, listening to the rain and the wind. Every so often, lightning would light up the room, casting strange shadows on the walls. After a while, I heard a noise from upstairs, a soft thump, like something falling. I froze, heart pounding, and listened. The noise came again, louder this time. I grabbed the flashlight and crept up the stairs, every step creaking under my weight. At the top of the stairs, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I shined the light, but the hall was empty. I checked my room, my parents' room, even the bathroom, nothing. I was about to go back downstairs when I heard a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. "Are you there?" I spun around, shining the light into the darkness. The whisper came again, closer this time. "I know you're there." I ran back downstairs and locked myself in the bathroom, heart racing. I sat in the dark, listening to the storm, the footsteps, the whispering voice. At one point, I heard someone try the doorknob, rattling it gently. I stayed in the bathroom until I heard my parents' car in the driveway. When I finally came out, the house was silent, the power still out. My parents didn't believe me at first, but when they checked the house, they found muddy footprints on the stairs and a window in the laundry room cracked open. The police said it was probably just a burglar looking for an easy target, but I knew better. The voice, the footsteps, the way the house felt wrong in the dark, it was something else. For months after, I was afraid to be home alone, especially during storms. I kept a flashlight by my bed and made sure every window was locked before my parents left. Even now, whenever the power goes out, I remember that night, the whisper in the dark, the footsteps on the stairs, the feeling that someone was in the house with me. Because sometimes, the scariest things aren't the ones you see. They're the ones you hear, just out of sight, waiting for the lights to go out.